Morning. Go ahead and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is true and accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. Make sure you're speaking into the mic. Feel free to move that around wherever you'd like. And when the questions come, you can move that around as well. Mr. Jorde.
Good morning, Doctor. Would you please state your full name?
Neil Russell Dahlquist.
And Dr. Dahlquist, you are a landowner of ground targeted by the Summit Carbon Hazardous Pipeline, proposed pipeline in Palo Alto County, Iowa?
Yes, I am.
And in preparation for your opposition to this project, is it true that you prepared some pre-filed testimony, which includes questions and answers along with some attachments and exhibits that you would like the board to consider?
Yes.
And rather than going through all of those same questions as we did in the pre-filed written testimony, if I were to ask you those same questions today, would the answers you would give here today be substantially similar?
Yes.
And do you have any, can you think of any material, I'm going to ask you about corrections and then updates. So first, corrections that you believe are important to correct any of your testimony.
No.
And then what about any material updates which would be confined to facts that have come to light since approximately the end of July when your pre-filed testimony was prepared?
Yes, there's two major issues that I've discovered.
What's the first one?
One is that my neighbor directly across from me is owned by Summit Pork LLC, and they have the same address in Iowa as the people involved in the pipelines and the same president.
Meaning a Mr. Bruce Rastetter?
I believe so.
Okay. And is it your understanding, based on the most recent maps, and we refer to them as KMZ, that the proposed Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline avoids the Summit pork operation there and goes on your property instead?
That's correct. I always wondered why there was a zig and then there was a zag. It just didn't make sense to me until I found out just in recent weeks who owned that hog confinement in that area.
Your Honor, could we have is it possible to put the map of this parcel up?
Yeah.
If we need it for the corrections portion, yeah, we're going to get it up pretty quick anyway.
Sure, might as well. And okay, and other folks might have more questions on that, but I guess maybe we can zoom out for just a moment here. Is that your parcel there in the center?
That's the 160 acres I own.
And are you saying the ground immediately to the southwest is owned by this Summit Ag Group?
I believe so, based on plant maps.
And now this aerial is dated 2016, and so it may not show what actually exists there today, which is unfortunate. But do you believe there are some hog barns on that property today?
I discovered they did get permission through the Board of County Supervisors in Palo Alto County, and the hog confinement is about right here.
Okay. So, again, the proposed Summit route avoids the Summit assets of Summit Ag.
Well, it sure appears to be.
Okay. And then what's the second update?
Well, I didn't really understand all of the different machinations, just as was previously discussed. And I am very interested in chemistry. My father was a chemical engineer. My son had a degree in chemistry, and I had a minor in chemistry, although I'm a medical doctor. So I take the magazine, that's the spokes magazine for the American Chemical Society, and it's called Chemical and Engineering News. And lo and behold, on October 11th of 2023, they had an editorial about the proceedings about these type of pipelines and the economic necessity or lack thereof of the pipeline. And their point was well taken. They made the comment, I hope we can show this, that the economic benefits of the pipeline are basically nil. It's just a boondoggle, and that these products that are made from carbon dioxide, such as methanol and other chemicals, refrigeration and carbonation, and there's others beyond that, should be, there's a lot of value to that, much more than would be from putting this in the ground.
So with that, let's offer some of your exhibits. So 499, we would offer 499, which is the pre-file testimony and attachments.
No objection. With no objections, the board will admit.
And then we would also offer exhibit 646, which are tile maps and property-specific information.
No objection. With no objection, the board will admit.
And we'd offer 648, which are additional maps and the article that Dr. Dahlquist is referencing.
Are there objections?
If I can just get there, let's see if I can find it. Take a quick look.
No objection. Was that no objection? Just noting. Okay, well, no objection. The board will admit. Give it the way due.
And then finally, exhibit 650 is Dr. Dahlquist, the county tile map.
No objection. The board will also admit. Give it the way due.
Thank you. Doctor, with that, I am going to tender you for questioning from the other parties.
Mr. Taylor?
I can't even get my thing up.
We reserved it for you.
Doctor, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. In your prepared testimony, you state that this pipeline would impact the fertility of the land. First of all, what is the current use of that land?
I purchased the land in 1991. I was able to secure the land because my father-in-law was a long-standing farmer in Palo Alto County, and he convinced the sellers that we would take care of the fertility of this land and be able to pass it on to our heirs or other people who would also keep its fertility. And so almost immediately we've done minimal till on this land so we can sequester nutrients and sequester carbon dioxide. It's basically we alternate and grow corn and soybeans. And
okay. So and then to follow up, what makes you think that this pipeline would impact the fertility of that ground?
Well, if you look at the map of the county tile, you can actually see the outline of the mesic area or the wetland that was drained back in the 1910s to 1920s for this farm. And I should make a note, and I hope everybody here understands that Palo Alto County is the most tiled county in the United States. It's the wettest county in the United States. And Danish immigrants came to a small town called Ringsted, north of Emmitsburg, in about 1910, and they knew the technology for tiling because of the low areas around the North Sea in Denmark. And that's what just transformed all this. I'm 2.5 miles from a town called Curlew, which is a shorebird. It's quite rare now. And I'm about 4 to 5 miles from a town called Mallard. This used to be a paradise for waterfowl hunters. Everything is so wet there. My land is so extensively tiled. Not many people have county tile going through their land. I have county tile on the west side of my land. I have county tile on the north side of my land. And I have county tile through the center of my land that eventually gets to the Des Moines River. What's going to happen, and I've been told this by my experts, is that they're going to, where they put this pipeline, they're going to cause compaction of the soil, and the fertility may never come back. they have told me so many different things in my interactions with them, but I think what they finally said before I stopped listening to them, to these Summit people, is that their pipeline would be 6 feet deep. It's a 24-inch pipe, and my tile is 3.5 to 5 feet deep, and my county tile, which they will also disrupt, is 8 feet deep, and that is 18-inch. And then on the north side of my land is 20-inch. I have to tell you that I've paid $26,000 this year to retile my land, only because if this goes through, I need to have that land not so wet because there will be less impaction on it. But if they hurt the county tile, which they probably will, I just was stuck with a bill from land I own north of Ayrshire, 58 acres, and they put county tile or redid county tile on about 1,000 acres. The bill was $1.15 million, and we had to pay as a landowner $67,000. And so I have to now worry about this company, which I have no faith in after my interactions with them, harming my county tile, but also harming my other tile. I think that probably speaks for itself.
Well, are you aware that Summit has said that they will install the pipeline at least 2 feet below your tile?
They're going to be going through my tile. That was another issue that they brought up. They initially said to me that I could have my agent, who would be able, and sons who have been doing tiling for me for 40 years, to observe them. Well, they took that off. They would not allow any observers of my choosing to watch when they put their pipeline in to see what tile was destroyed.
Is that something Summit told you?
They told me, but then they took it away.
Well, how did they take it away?
Well, it's a promise, but then they said, nope, we can't do it. We have too much liability to allow you to be able to observe if they, in so many words, destroy your tile in this process.
Are you aware that if the board were to grant a permit and Summit is out there constructing and installing the pipeline, that there are county inspectors who would be there to monitor the construction?
I have heard that in the last year at the county supervisors meeting in Palo Alto County, that was an avenue they were looking into. Whether it was going to actually happen or not, I don't know.
And are you aware that Summit has said that it will repair any damaged tile?
Well, that's a problem because I'm not sure they're going to be able to repair it to what it was like to begin with.
Why?
I just don't trust them. My interaction with them has led me not to trust them.
In your written testimony, you also expressed a concern about a safety risk. What makes you think there's a safety risk?
Well, I'm a medical doctor. I trained as an internal medicine specialist, and then I trained as a neurology specialist. I've been an academician. I got a master's of public health from Harvard. I trained during internal medicine at Harvard. I finished my neurology at the Mayo Clinic. I was a professor, and I retired 3 years ago at the University of Minnesota. I taught in the medical school. I taught neurology residents, and I taught medical students and other specialists. I'm an expert in brain damage, and especially an expert in brain damage from asphyxia, and I'm an expert in the death of the brain. These pipelines, I didn't realize how destructive they can be and the explosive properties of these. It's on the internet. I know they've shared this in these meetings where they show an explosion that was done on an 8-inch pipe in Norway. The problem we have, which is so eminently clear to me, and I don't think has really been brought up here, is that when you're exposed to 40 1,000 parts per million of carbon dioxide, you're probably going to lose consciousness in 1 minute. If you're exposed to 7.5% or 75,000, you're going to not only lose consciousness, you're going to be dead. So you're going to be dead in less than 2 to 5 minutes. Do you think it matters if you have anybody who's going to get there, who could get there, to rescue you in 2 to 5 minutes from the surrounding towns? I don't think that's going to happen. I've heard testimony to that the closest hospital that had the facilities was Mason City. From my interaction with my family in this community, I know the closest hospital is going to be Emmitsburg and then Pocahontas. If you get somebody who has had oxygen deprivation, one of the treatments can be hyperbaric oxygen. We have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber in Minneapolis. You can get maybe 10 people in that per day. I don't think there's anybody in Iowa, but I can't speak for it, where there is a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. I think what you're going to discover is when these pipelines, when it does blow and where it blows, and if it's around some people, there's going to be deaths. And those deaths are going to be on the people that made this pipeline or the people who agreed to have this pipeline. These are extremely dangerous. These pipes wear out. The valves are every 80 feet. I have 4 different farmhouses around me. I didn't know who owned the hog confinement, nor did any of my neighbors until we discovered it was owned by Summit. We have another hog confinement that's another half mile away, that's just around the block, so to speak. The house there next to that hog confinement is 0.45 miles away. Summit, I've only been to one of their meetings, and everything after that was interaction with their agents. They never told us at that 2-hour meeting in Emmitsburg, that was about 2 years ago in September, that there were dangers with this pipeline. And how would I know? Even as a practitioner, I didn't know that carbon dioxide was not only it's a toxin by itself and suppresses not only respirations but the heart and can kill you that way, but it also causes asphyxia because it's 1.5 times heavier than air, and it displaces air and it goes to low areas. And guess what? Where my property is, it's all low areas. The problem is when I started to hear the testimony at these meetings, if they won't give us the plume data on a 24-inch pipe, what I've read, it could be 4,000 feet. Well, you're going to cause asphyxia on these people, or you're going to cause direct toxic damage from CO2, and you're going to kill a lot of people. It just depends if you have houses. Now, there are certainly areas in Iowa that there are just no houses, but not around where we have our property. There are a lot of houses, and there's a lot of people. The other issue is that we have County Highway 4, which is a busy highway between Emmitsburg, Mallard, and Pocahontas. It gets traveled all the time. Gasoline-powered cars don't work if they go through an area of no oxygen. People would come to try to save somebody if they even knew that they were being injured. And those people, their vehicles may not work. If they don't have the right equipment, which most of them are not equipped, because I never heard Summit ever talk about safety measures, and I'm not even sure there's any safety measures that you could use in a timely manner. But those people could succumb to it. It's kind of like the whole thing that hydrogen sulfide on farm septic tanks, where one guy would go in and he would become unconscious. The next person would go in and they'd try to save him. They'd become unconscious. Now we have 2 deaths and so forth. Well, it's the same thing with this problem with carbon dioxide. So as a medical doctor, I can assure you that we're going to see problems. Now, from my other reading is that we have had 5,100 miles of CO2 pipelines. The majority of them are not around Minnesota or Iowa. But these CO2 pipelines since 2003 have had 103 leaks. Now you're going to put in a pipeline for 1,300 miles and you're not going to get leaks? I can guarantee there's going to be explosions and leaks. It's just a question, are you going to be around people? You have these valves that are 20 miles apart, if that.
Objection, Your Honor.
So anyway, I'm sorry for this long answer.
This has been wandering through 6, 7 different topics. I think we're far from a direct response to the question that was asked.
In your written testimony, you also expressed a concern about safety risk. What makes you think there's a safety risk? Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, let me ask another question.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Move on.
Can we bring up the KMZ? You mentioned occupied structures around your property. Can we zoom out a little bit and see where those might be? Okay. You mentioned earlier that although it's not on the map from 2016, that the Summit CAFO is just right southwest of your property, right there. Okay. And then there are also some existing buildings. What are those?
Right here?
Right there, yes.
Those were two sheds.
Okay.
They're just a Quonset shed to cover, but they weren't open.
Okay.
You could put a tractor or something underneath it to have some shelter.
Okay. And I take it from your first testimony with Mr. Jorde that was the pipeline route originally entirely south of your parcel?
I don't understand your question.
Okay. Maybe I misunderstood your original testimony, but I thought you said that the route was moved to avoid the Summit CAFO.
Well, what I was getting at is that if you go to the west, you see this zag, this change in the pipeline that suddenly goes in a diagonal manner to the north. Then it comes down, and then it avoids the Summit property and goes on the other side of my property. So I just never understood why in the world would an engineer do this, and I'm just throwing it out. They didn't go through the property that's owned by Summit.
Okay. So for the record, since the record won't show the map, the pipeline route goes from east to west, just south of your property until it gets almost to the west edge of your property, and then, as you say, zigzags up to your property, and then goes again east to west. Is that correct?
That's right. Then it comes back down again after,
okay,
I don't know, maybe half a mile or a mile. I can't remember exactly.
Okay. Is there anything in your experience with pipelines that informs your concerns about this particular pipeline?
Well, I have other concerns, and I have a lot of concerns, but one in particular is my experience with XL Energy, because I have a area of eminent domain on my property in St. Paul, Minnesota, and I have 1.6 acres, and so this area of eminent domain is in my backyard. And what they did is in August of 2019, they sprayed shrubs along the right-of-way. And that was the first time they had ever used chemicals. And the chemical they used, of course, they never told us about this. We had to find out about it like a year later. I had to research it. It was a chemical that got into the water table. It would go down through the soil every 3 feet in 1 year. Anyway, they killed a whole lot of my fruit trees. So I wanted to get some compensation from them for killing my fruit trees. So what I did is I reported it to them, and they ignored me. So then I got 2 nurseries that independently came up with about $17,000 of damage. What happened is that I retained an attorney. I went through small claims court for $15,000. They always either knew the referee or there was something. They kept putting it off. So my attorney said, you better go to district court for $17,000. In May of 2023, and this is one reason I decided to go with Dominion Law, is that they would settle with me for $6,000, but the settlement said that I would not indemnify them or the people who sprayed the land as a subcontractor, but instead I would be indemnified for future damages from this toxic herbicide they sprayed. I thought, this is the craziest thing you could ever imagine. My attorney said, you can't sign this. Just walk away from it. You could be liable for millions of dollars. Well, here I've got this same thing. They're making this pipeline in that corner. You may laugh at this, but if you live in Palo Alto County, one of the major people in Palo Alto County turns out to be the weed control person. And the weed control person just happens to be appointed. My father-in-law was just like Ronald Reagan. He was the nicest guy, and he always got appointed as the weed control person, because how would you like to go up to some farmer and tell him, you better take care of all those weeds? I asked Summit. They never gave me any response for what would happen on my property with weeds that would come off of their right-of-way. And you could almost laugh about this, but then look at what happened in my property in St. Paul. I lost because I didn't have the ability to keep on fighting a bunch of attorneys. No, and it's the same thing here. I mean, they say they're going to do something, but then they don't do it. So I don't have any kind of. I never got a environmental protection statement on this pipeline. They won't tell me about the hazard of it.
Back to the route. Did you ever talk to Summit's agents or representatives about an alternative route, or why they
oh no, they said that's another interesting thing. They told me this was a done deal. I've had two agents. They said that you were rubber stamping this as a board, that it was going to be done in March of 2023, and you better sign up for it with us, because you won't get a good deal when you go to the county courthouse and this is condemned. And they said they were going to commence with digging this pipeline in July of 2023. The other issue I had with them is that they said to me, the first agent said, we want to measure where the pipeline is. Okay, fine, you can do it. But I want to know when you're there, because I want to see what you're going to do to my land. Well, they never told us. All we did is we went by, and the guy said, well, I'm sorry, I guess we never did know that what they were going to do. And so we found a bunch of tire tracks on our land. Now, fortunately, it was right before we were going to plant, so they could have done a lot of damage, but they didn't. That was just another example of my interaction with them as a company. So I just don't have faith in these people because of the way they've presented themselves to me.
One final question about your written testimony. You said that the pipeline would require a new ingress to your land. Why would that be? Yeah,
the problem is that the way you access this field is there is a little roadway. Well, you got to go through the ditch. And the other thing is that the ditch, to get into that 160 acres now, we're going to have to build another one, and the bill would be $3,500. There's another issue here too, is that the county is going to put a rural water pipeline right through here. That's a done deal. But it just hasn't been done. They've done it on other properties that we've had. It's just they're moving forward. So that also is going to be in the route of the pipeline, is this rural waterway, the water pipeline.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Mr. Whippel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Dahlquist, I represent 7 counties in this proceeding. I just want to see if I can clear up a couple things that you testified to this morning. Looking at the KMZ there, we see at the bottom the images appear to be taken in 2016. Do you know approximately when the structures on the Summit-owned parcel were built?
Well, they went to the county in 2018, so I think it was either built 2018 or 2019.
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to see if we can get some of the facts about the land agents who you said they visited you in St. Paul.
We had 2 land agents. They talked to me a number of times on the phone, but then I had they got rid of one and they had me get another one. Not that I wanted him, but the other person, they just introduced it to me. He showed up at my house in St. Paul without asking us twice to try to get me to sign, and that was a big issue. One time I met with him and I told him I really had no interest in this, and the second time I refused to see him, and he went on his way. But he still did talk to us later, and then I told him that we were going to hire the Dominion law firm to represent us, and he stopped then.
Well, I mean, you repeated some statements into the record, and I just wondered if you remembered the name of the land agent and the approximate date that those statements were made.
Well, the first land agent, I don't remember. I think the second land agent was Cody Pardon. I think. I don't remember exactly. I think. I don't remember. I didn't want to remember, actually.
That's right. So, just one last series of questions. You were talking about county tile running across your parcel?
Yes.
And did I hear you right that it runs across the north part?
Yeah, what happens is it starts up about, you can see it on the map I gave you, but it starts up about here. What happened is this was all wetland. There's a little bit of highland here, but all the rest is all wetland. And the county tile starts here. It goes right along, in Iowa, you own half of the roadway. It goes along the ditch, and it goes down. It makes a little loop. Then it comes over here. Then it comes down here, and then it drains here, and eventually to the Des Moines River.
So, just to point out the directions, you're saying it comes up from the south and traces the west edge of the parcel, traveling a little bit north, and then essentially circling back towards the east around the parcel.
Yeah, that's right. But it's in the parcel. And it goes through and then it goes into the center, and right here, and then it goes down. This is all buried pipeline, and then it goes to the river. The river, Highway 4 is right over here. And then the river is about another mile over that way.
Do you know if, when you say county pipeline or county tile, and your fears about being assessed, are you part of a drainage district?
Oh, yes.
Okay, just getting that in the record. Do you know if the county drainage district in Palo Alto County has granted an easement or issued a permit or whatever their local process is to cross the drainage district?
Well, that's another issue, because one of the problems when I've been to 2 meetings. It's hard for me to get to these meetings, but when I've been to 2 meetings, what happened is they said that we can say anything we want, but we don't have any legal ability to get them to stop or to do this. So I don't know where that stands, because the county tile is 8 feet deep, and I don't know I really don't know. There's never been, to my knowledge, any ordinance to try to stop them. Although I think that's coming up this week. I've been told that there's going to be a movement afoot to try to get some ordinance to stop this.
Well, I guess I would assume that would be a little different than permission to cross the drainage district, and so I was just trying to establish whether or not permission to cross the drainage district had been obtained. And your testimony is, I think, that you just don't know.
Well, I think that they said that they can't stop it, so it's going to cross it. That's what that was my from listening to them.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Ms. Collins?
Good morning, Mr. Dahlquist. I just have a few questions. You just mentioned, just to follow up on that last question, when you say they said, is that Summit or is that the county?
I mean,
pertaining to permitting for the drainage district.
Well, I think they said that they can't stop it, but they were trying to get it so it would be so deep that it wouldn't interfere with it. But I really don't know.
Is that the county that said that, or Summit?
Well, it's the county supervisors, the 5 county supervisors.
Okay, I'm going on another deal. You were very concerned about safety, and as your extensive qualifications pertaining to the medical field, neurology and the gas, etc. I think you mentioned, did Summit at any time give you any plume modeling?
No.
Any risk or hazards pertaining to?
No.
Are you aware that Summit, as up to this date, has not provided emergency response teams with plume modeling?
I believe I'm aware of that.
So they're unable to set up a emergency response system.
I believe I'm aware of that.
Do you feel this is necessary?
Well, like I said, yes, it's necessary, but the problem is going to be is that if this thing does explode, which it will explode at some point, and where it explodes, it's going to kill people because it kills them so quickly. This is a very toxic, this is not just asphyxia, this is also a direct toxin.
Are you aware that per testimony of the Summit witness that they have contacted 0 hospitals related to response to an emergency situation?
I'm not, from my interactions with them, I'm not surprised.
Do you find that very concerning?
Well, of course I do.
Does this lead you to the conclusion that if there is an event, that they will probably just cordon off the area and anybody within that plume toxicity range could be considered collateral damage?
Well, I'm assuming that's what's going to happen.
No further questions, thank you.
Ms. Gruenhagen?
Thank you, Your Honor. Hi. My name is Chris Gruenhagen, and I have a few questions here for you, just as a follow-up. You were talking to Mr. Taylor about a new road needing to be built, and you also talk about it on page 4 of your testimony. Is what you're talking about is a new field access, or are you talking about building a new county road?
No, it's a new field access.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear about that. And that's for Summit to access the pipeline right-of-way? Is that what you're...
No, that's for us to access it.
What do you mean, so that
Well,
you can access it?
For the person who rents with me, and I don't rent, I own it. So how we can get access to the land with our tractors.
Where's your current farm access?
It's right there at the end. Right there.
Okay, so the construction will interfere with your current field access?
Yeah, we wouldn't be able to use it. So we have to build another one right there.
Okay, so you need to build another one farther north or something?
That's right.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. Could staff pull up his exhibit 646 with his tiles? Maps. And then go down to the far southwest corner. If you can zoom in on that a little bit. Now, is that corner where the pipeline is proposed to go?
Yeah, it goes. Let's see if I get this to work. Yeah, right along here.
And so, with the route, do you believe it'll interfere with your 6-inch tile, or your 4-inch lateral tiles there?
Well, I can't tell you. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it for sure it's a 4-inch, but it could be a 6-inch too. And then along the roadway is 15-inch county tile.
And that's a 15-inch
or
diameter?
18. I'm sorry, it's 18 inches county tile.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful. And about how deep is your tile?
3.5 to 5 feet.
And if the permit is approved, I would expect you would want the pipeline to be below where your tile's at, so as to not interfere with the operation of the tile.
That's right.
Okay. And then the CAFO that I'm finished with that particular map. Thank you. The CAFO that you mentioned, do you know approximately how far it is from the proposed pipeline route? The CAFO that you referenced, the Summit Ag CAFO,
I don't know what you mean by that.
The hog operation?
Oh, the hog operation is directly across from the end of my field.
Yeah. Do you know how close it is to the proposed pipeline route?
Well, it's right where those Quonset huts were. They replaced the Quonset huts with the hog confinement.
Would it be less than 150 feet away?
If
you look at the DNR records of where it's located.
I don't know, 200 feet, something like that. I don't know, 200 feet maybe.
So it's still fairly close.
Pretty close.
Okay. And then the Exhibit H, did you get a copy of that mailed to you in July?
Is that the? There's one that I went out. It's there's a big one.
Yes,
yeah,
it would have been a pretty thick packet.
I did that. I looked at that and I had to go through that.
Okay.
July.
Did you see on there the listing of your farm tenant?
Yeah, it's Randy Loomis.
Okay. And it lists 2 addresses there. I assume they're both not correct. Right? I assume he doesn't.
I'd have to look at it, but he lives. It's a little bit confusing. He lives about a mile from the town of Ayrshire, but I think he would list Ayrshire as his address.
Okay. Could staff please pull up his Exhibit H? You don't mind, and we'll just take a look at it. I just want to. It looks like one of those things is wrong in what it's listed, and so your clarification would be helpful there.
Yeah, it's Randy Loomis. It's Loomis. It's spelled wrong, and that's wrong. This thing, Wintergreen, in North Carolina. I don't know how that got in there. So that's not correct. That should be taken away.
Okay. Thank you. I was wondering how he could farm from North Carolina. So
I don't know either.
But I would ask about that. So his name is spelled incorrectly, and is the second address perhaps close, or you think that's wrong as well?
Well, he lives up in Ayrshire. I don't.
Okay.
Don't. I don't. I think if you sent it to Ayrshire, Iowa, it would get to him. He doesn't live in Emmitsburg.
Right. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. No further questions.
Ms. Kaufman?
Hi, Doctor. I'm Julie Kaufman. I'm also a landowner and a retired nurse, and I am impressed by your credentials as an expert. I consider you to be an expert in neurology and things, if you have all those credentials. And I have questions about safety. I think most landowners are very, very concerned about safety. And we're also very concerned that Summit does not seem to be as concerned about safety. And you talked a little bit about the routes going through less inhabited places. And I know that this has been brought up before, and I've brought it up, that they consider it let me get it quite right, what the Jimmy Powell, the COO of Summit, testified. I do know the city of Erling is not a high consequential effect area. And so I guess that means that if it's not highly populated, Summit does not consider it to be a high consequential area. And most of us that live very close to where these pipelines, we are maybe a family of, my family, there's 7 of us currently living right close, and our neighbors are right close. And it's not a high consequential area, but to those of us who live there, it would have high consequences to us if a rupture occurred. As you have testified, we would probably have minutes to live if that occurred, close to, depending on the plume, but we don't know that, but we consider ourselves to be very close.
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
Well, I'm just.
This has been going on.
Ms. Kaufman,
Excuse me.
It's been going on for.
Hold on, Mr. Duboinski. Hold on. All right, we've been doing this for 8 weeks. All right, when there's an objection, both sides get a chance to address the objection. We rule on the objection, and then we proceed. So I know you're frustrated. I know it means a lot. But we still have an order to all this.
I understand.
Mr. Duboinski, state your objection.
This has been going on an awfully long time without a question, and Ms. Kaufman is providing testimony about her own circumstances. We would ask that she just ask a question for the witness to answer.
Okay, Ms. Kaufman, you can respond to his objection or ask a question.
Okay, I will ask the question then. According to your own testimony, anyone living near a potential rupture would have a very probably fatal consequence. Is that your testimony?
Probably.
Thank you. And I also would like to ask you, do you think that Summit is very concerned with those of us who are living close to those areas?
No.
Does it seem reasonable to you that PHMSA should make some guidelines for safety, even though it probably won't, there probably is not, in your estimation, there probably is not an effective emergency plan available if it can be that quick. So this is extremely, extremely dangerous.
That's correct.
And have you heard the testimony of some of the people that were affected because of the Satartia incident in Mississippi, that pipeline rupture? Have you heard any of that testimony?
Yes.
And are you aware that one of the persons that we heard testify said that he still suffered headaches, loss of memory, just all sorts of different. He couldn't find a job because he wasn't able to think as clearly. Would that, in your estimation, be consistent with oxygen deprivation? This man had to be revived.
Yes.
And yet Summit calls it, in another testimony, they say that some of these, they call it, they don't acknowledge that they caused that problem. Would that surprise you?
No.
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
The wording of that question made it sound like Summit was denying that, or was saying that it didn't cause the problem in Satartia, which of course is factually right. That didn't involve a pipeline that was under.
Okay, I will restate it.
Just be patient, but I appreciate that. Go ahead. Objections noted. Go ahead, Ms. Kaufman.
My point was that they wouldn't take responsibility for the victim. I will call him a victim, even though he's alive. The person who was affected, the consequential effects that he suffered were as a result of that incident.
I believe it was a result of that incident.
And would it surprise you to know that they called it his alleged problems were probably or possibly not a result of that?
Not surprised by that.
And in because of all these safety issues, do you think that, and in addition to all of the other issues, liability issues, water issues, do you think that this is a really a necessary thing for America, or for Iowa?
No, it's not. I mean, that's what reason I have that. I got additional information is that at least the American Chemical Society, through their as a spokesperson for them, said no, that all these the carbon dioxide can be used and you can make a profit from it, and you don't have to wreck all this good farmland and by putting this pipeline through and then have the danger of it. You know, because of this, I can't. My insurance will not cover this. I have Iowa Mutual tornado insurance. All they said to me, and I've talked to them a number of times, could I get a rider? No. Well, we'll sue them. Okay. Will you put this on paper for me? No. So we're stuck with liability issues. Because of it, we were going to, Randy Luminous and I had planned at some point to probably put our own hog confinement in a half mile from the Summit hog confinement, and then use the manure for organic corn growth. Well, we decided against it because how am I going to ever cover myself for liability? And I'm just telling you that the liability issues with this is huge. It's just, if there's a catastrophe, it's going to bankrupt us. And if they can't, if they're going to always go to the owner beside the person where this area of eminent domain is. And I already found out with my interactions then with XL Energy, where this goes, even though it was a small deal, but you can just think how this could be magnified. And it's something that shouldn't be forced on us. Why wreck all this good land by doing something that's going to harm people?
Do you believe that Summit is a green or environmentally friendly company?
Well, not at all.
Do you believe they try to portray themselves that way?
Well, I have no idea what they try to portray themselves at. I just know that it looks like they didn't put the pipeline through their own property right across from mine.
Well, what I meant by that was there's the premise that I have heard is that they want to take CO2 out of the air because it's causing, well, our president has said it's an existential threat to, it's causing green warming and climate change. And so do you think they're trying to portray themselves as like saving the planet, sort of, so to speak?
Of course they are, but it's going to be so minuscule the amount that they take out, and all they're doing is making themselves so rich from it. I'm sure they're not going to be around very long. As soon as their tax credits are gone, they're going to be gone. So
basically, you're saying that their main, and I think they've admitted this, is that it's an economic thing for them, is the reason they're pushing so hard for this.
Yeah, it's going to make a few rich people richer in the United States, and it's a boondoggle and make a lot of people poorer in terms of tax dollars.
No further questions, thank you.
Ms. Hike?
Hello, Dr. Dahlquist. I'm Chris Hike. I'm a landowner as well. Just have a question. Do you believe that Summit has acted in good faith with your negotiations with you?
Well, not with me.
I know I read in your pre-filed testimony you have concerns in your easement. Had you brought up those concerns with the Summit representatives?
Well, many times I talked to them. I didn't think I was being compensated for what they're doing, and they just kept telling me that basically the conversations were always the same. So if you don't sign up with us now for this X amount of dollars, what's going to happen is that the IUB is going to put this through in March. They're going to start work in July, and that's what I got told repeatedly. I didn't get told this once or twice. I got told repeatedly. So they said, you better do it.
You felt threatened?
Oh, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Kaufman, your mic's on. Just giving you a heads up. Okay. With no other questions, we will go to Mr. Jorde for redirect.
Thank you. And can we pull that?
Sorry, hold on. Oh, yeah. Forgot to ask board members. Go ahead.
Can we pull the KMZ back up, please? And while we're doing that, the testimony you gave relative to XL Energy and the promises they made when they wanted the project but weren't kept after they had the project, was the general, one of the points of that is that even though the promises were made, I'm sure there were some guardrails in place, they still forced you to prove your damages, incur costs, go through lengthy legal battles, and then ultimately frustrated you to the point that you never were compensated.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Now, as we look at this, is there the ability on the KMZ to click on the property to the southwest? Does it have ownership? Can we click on that and see, just so the record's clear? No. Okay.
No, we don't.
You don't have that. All right. I've looked it up for the record. Do you think it might be owned by Summit Pork LLP, a division of the Rastetter Empire? Does that make sense?
I'm pretty sure it is, because they're the ones that got the permit for the hog confinement.
Okay. All right. Got it. And do you know of any reason why this pipeline route can't go south of the Summit Pork facility on Summit's property if this is such a wonderful project?
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me that it could have been done that way. I mean, I was always amazed. I said, why in the world would their engineers do this? But then I found out who owned the property.
Now, in regards to your education, training, background, and experience, and training at Harvard and the Mayo Clinic, it's your professional opinion that exposure to 40,000 parts per million of concentrated CO2 could lead to unconsciousness in the matter of minutes?
It's in a matter of seconds, 60 to 90 seconds.
And a 20-inch pipeline is proposed through your particular parcel, and there's evidence in the record that a plume at the concentration of 40,000 parts per million could travel at least 2,920 feet from a 20-inch pipe. Does that give you even more concern?
Oh, very much so. And by the way, I think it's 24-inch pipe.
Okay. They have the right to go up to 24-inch, which could possibly be as high as 4,000 feet for the 40,000 concentration. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And if the board, I know everything you've said and we've heard for about 8 weeks now, doesn't seem to make any sense how this could be approved, but you understand if it was approved that the board could make the decision to not grant eminent domain, which would then put the power back in your hands and give you a choice. And so if this was to be approved, the project, would you say that they certainly can't approve eminent domain because that's not a necessary right for the project?
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
Calls for legal conclusion.
Mr. Jorde.
This certainly does not ask his opinion, what he wants granted or not on his property.
Do you need to add, Mr. Dubinsky?
Well, I mean, the fact that he asked for his opinion doesn't change that it's an opinion on a legal conclusion. He's asking whether he thinks it meets a particular legal test that's required in this case.
But that wasn't the question, but I'm happy to rephrase.
Go ahead and rephrase your question.
All right. Do you understand that eminent domain could be granted, but not necessarily has to be granted just because a route is approved? Are you aware of that?
Yes.
And on your particular parcel, to be clear, you are here because you don't believe eminent domain is necessary and therefore shouldn't be granted, even if the project is approved, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dahlquist. We appreciate your testimony. Have a good day. We will take a quick 15-minute break, 20-minute break, and come back on the record. Mr. Jorde, who do we have up next?
We have, let's see, Maureen Albert Bichard, and she'll be live, and then we'll have a couple virtual.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we will be back 10:15 or shortly after.